If you can figure out why relationships fall apart due to money, you can prevent it from happening, or you can even repair it after it's already happened. And for those men out there, I'm going to give you a little framework, if you will, of how I was able to get my wife back after being divorced for 5 years. And I hope it will help you prevent this from happening in the future, repair any existing relationships you have, and for some of you, and for me, as lucky as I am, get that relationship back. About 7 or 8 years ago at this point, I was told by my friends that I needed to get a girlfriend because I was single for 1.5 years. And they told me to download this app called Tinder. Now, at the time, Tinder was a very new thing. And I didn't like the idea of online dating. It was still new and it was very uncomfortable for me. And I didn't like the idea of putting myself out there on this website and saying, this is who I am, date me. And I finally looked back at the last 1.5 years of my life and I realized that I had no love, I had no affection, I had no one to share with. And I thought, you know what, the pain of that is a lot more than the pain of being uncomfortable creating a dating profile. And so I went ahead and created it. And one of the first swipes I made was this beautiful Turkish girl that was in a law office. And we matched, and I sent her a message, and I said, what kind of lawyer are you? Because I noticed she was in a law office. I could see the certificates. I could see clearly it was a law office. So she sends me a message back, and she says, wow, that's like the best question I've ever been asked on here. And I was like, what kind of questions do you normally get asked? And she's like, don't worry about it. I'm an immigration lawyer, right? Da, 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 da. And so we start talking, we end up dating. And at one point, it almost fell apart. And it was because I grew up in America in a very Western mindset. And men, for those of you out there, you know how like if you give a woman, a Western woman, too much attention, and not all of them, but a large portion, too much attention, you're too nice to them, you get friend zoned, or they don't respect you as much as the guy who's like a little mean to them. And I always thought this was like honestly really messed up. And there are a lot of men out there that they promote these tactics of like being slightly mean to a woman and not giving her a lot of attention so that you create attraction. And technically, if you're dealing with a Western woman, they're right, because that's the culture that we grew up in. That's what we're taught. And so I started doing this, not because I wanted to do it, but because I just thought I would get friend zoned if I didn't sort of pull back a little bit. And quickly I realized that that did not work with my wife, because my wife was from Turkey. Very different culture, totally different mindset. The opposite worked over there. You give a Turkish woman lots of love, lots of attention, etc. That creates attraction. You do the American thing and they're going to think you suck. They just are, because she started to think I sucked. And I was like, what's going on here? So I went and I researched Turkish women and I figured all this out through forums, etc. And immediately I made the correction. And when I made the correction, all of a sudden she was way more attracted to me, and etc., etc. And we ended up getting married within like 6 months. Well, we end up being together for 4 or 5 years. We have a baby, and I start a business. And look, my wife was extremely supportive of my business, because at the time of me meeting her, I was dead broke. I had a lot of time on my hands, which is probably why I was able to figure this out, to solve the problems I had, figure out Turkish culture, and make the correction. And that's why it worked. But we had another problem. We didn't have any money. We literally couldn't even buy groceries. And so she offered to get 3 jobs and help support while I figured out how to grow my online business, because I was telling her, I'm like, hey, I really think this will work. I have this idea, et cetera, et cetera. And she's like, all right, I believe in you. You're my husband. I will support you. I will work 3 jobs and you go and figure that out. I felt horrible as a man because I didn't want my wife to have to work at all. I believe in like more traditional sort of family structure, traditional gender roles. If my wife wants to work because she has a passion, fine, but I want to be able to provide. That's just me. And so her having to work 3 jobs was devastating to me. So I said, just give me a couple months, I'll figure it out. Well, 6 months later, hadn't made a dime. And she still supported me. She never stopped believing in me. She told me later on that she had doubts. She just didn't mention them to me. But all of a sudden, out of nowhere, after reading a ton of books and sharpening my skills in the world of marketing and sales, I was able to, out of nowhere, create a 6-figure month for my business. Like literally, it just clicked. I figured out how to do something, which at that time was online sales presentations, also known as webinars. I did a webinar, it made 48 grand, did another webinar a week later, like 10 days later, made 52 grand, made 100 grand my first month after it clicked. First thing I did, quit all your jobs. Ever since then, she's never worked a day in her life. And so what happened was we started coming up. Wealth started building. We made 2.9 million our first year. Next thing you know, we're buying this 8,000 square foot house on the water in Gulfport, Florida. Beautiful, had a dock, got jet skis, all this cool stuff, right? The brand's growing, the money's growing, etc. However, more money, more problems. So my ability to solve problems, because look, that's how you get things done in life. That's how you accomplish things. You solve problems. Just like I solved the problem by not understanding Turkish culture, going, researching it, and that allowed me to marry my wife and continue the relationship. I had problems in my business, and I made the mistake of trying to solve them all myself. I'll tell you in a moment why that was a mistake and what you can do to not make the same mistake. But I made that mistake, and all of my energy, all of my mental real estate, it was all completely directed towards solving problems in my business. And so as marital problems came up, especially after we had the kid, I had nothing left to solve those problems. And so I grew impatient. I thought that solving these problems over here was more important, and these problems shouldn't be a thing, et cetera, et cetera. And so I was not willing, nor did I have the capacity to solve the problems in my marriage that would keep me married. Because every marriage has problems, right? Both people make mistakes, you got to deal with them. Because I couldn't deal with them, the marriage fell apart. We got divorced, and we were divorced for, I believe it was about 5 years. This sent me into a spiral where up until that point in my life, I was a very conservative type of guy. I only had long-term relationships. I was just a nice dude. And I never thought I would get divorced. And it really changed me. It really reset my life where I was like, what am I doing? Like, I just accomplished this. I became rich. I had a son, found a wife, and then it all got ripped away. And something clicked in my brain. And in order to deal with that pain and suffering, I started doing the thing a lot of men would do, and that is seeking validation from women who gave validation quite easily. Dopamine. I smoked so much weed. Cheech and Chong would be proud. I partied constantly. I held parties. Like, I did all this stuff to simply deal with the pain instead of doing the thing that would have taken the pain away, and that's personal growth. And day after day after day, I realized that while in that moment, because like as a man, like if you're a man and you're watching this, you know that if you have problems in your life and you're thinking about all these horrible thoughts, the second a woman with huge jugs and a little string bikini gets and sits on top of you, it's not the woman, and you know what I'm talking about. It's the fact that all your attention goes to that woman, that situation, the sexuality of that situation, and it distracts you from the thing that is giving you pain. Just like when you go to the gym and you work out, it gets the stress out. Just like when it's a distraction. It really is. Even to men who've been that way their whole lives, I guarantee you that every man, in my opinion, would be more happy if they had a fulfilled life with a fulfilled partner. Everything was fulfilling. But because men make so many mistakes, we have so much pain that we deal with upstairs. We seek to suppress that pain through grandiose acts, sex and partying and status and fancy cars. And so, you know, there's nothing wrong with fancy cars and all that. But the point I'm trying to make is that it gives us an escape. And if you're a man, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And I sat there and I loathed in that escape for over 2 years. And after a while, I realized that all I was doing was numbing the pain. I wasn't dealing with the pain. So I got rid of a bunch of friends, and this is where the framework comes in for, I'm not going to say it's going to get your wife back. I got my wife back, but I'm not going to promise that. I'm just going to share with you what worked for me. You know, there's an old saying, if you want to change your kids, change yourself, right? If your kids are misbehaving, it's probably because they're seeing something from you and they're misbehaving based on what they see from you. So fix yourself and you can fix your kids. There's an old saying for that. And I realized that I had not taken the time to fix myself because all the problems with the business, right? So at this point, I had a lot of wealth. I had a lot of cash. I had a lot of real estate. I decided to take a year off from my business, and I went into like pretty much just hibernation mode. I had some staff, but I didn't really sell anything, and I pretty much took a year off. I didn't make that much money that year. I wasn't making no millions, you know. I think I might have made $1 million that year, but that was just residuals and things like that. And I sat with myself and I said, what is wrong with me? Why did this fall apart? And here's what I found. Number one, I found that the way to solve problems in your life is to do things that you don't want to do. People who want to lose weight, they don't want to get up at 5 a.m. and go to the gym. People who want to deal with their diabetes, they don't want to stop eating sugar. People that want to deal with self-confidence issues or issues with their mother or something, they don't want to go to therapy. Nobody wants to do the thing that solves the problem, because the thing that solves the problem is painful. And I realized that, number one. And so I realized it's not about what I want. It's about what works, which is funny because in business, it's the same thing. It's not about what you want to sell. It's not about what you want. It's about what the market wants, because if what the market wants isn't what you want to sell, you ain't going to make no money. So it just is what it is. And so I went to therapy. I read a lot of books on conflict resolution, et cetera, et cetera. I stopped drinking completely. I stopped partying. I got rid of all the friends that I had that engaged in those activities. I got rid of the friends I had friends that engaged in those activities, and I cleaned up my life. And I realized, I sat down and I wrote out on a piece of paper, I said, okay, what kind of woman do I want and what kind of woman do I not want? And on the left, I wrote down all the things. And on the right, I wrote down all the things. And I thought about taking this sheet of paper and, paying like 20 grand to one of these matchmaking services to find me a wife, right? Like, I was like literally like that. But then I looked at the sheet and I looked at the left and I looked at the right, and I realized that on the left, it described almost perfectly my ex-wife. And on the right, it described almost perfectly all my ex-girlfriends. And so I said, in that moment, I had an epiphany, and I was like, wait a minute. I wasn't married to the wrong person. I just didn't do the hard things required to work at the relationship with the right person. And in that moment, I knew exactly what to do. I called up my ex-wife and I said, we need to fix this. We need to fix it for us. We need to fix it for our son. Now, at one point, my ex-wife told me that she'd rather light herself on fire than get remarried to me. But here's what I know. I know that persistence pays off. I know that from business. I know that follow-up is the way to make the sale, because not everybody says yes the first time. I know that from business. I know that if you really want to show somebody that you've changed, you can't appear that you've changed. You can't convince or persuade that you changed. You have to change, and you have to let it happen naturally. You have to show them that. See, a lot of men, we try to coerce our ways into fixing a relationship. We try to be persuasive or convince instead of just fixing the problem, period. And so that's what I focus on. She said no. I think I counted over 300 times. And right around 315, 320, I kind of like had this little app that she said no, she said no, she said no. It was a lot. One day, after she saw the difference in me, after she saw the change, after she saw all of this, she started saying things like, wow, you seem different. Wow, da, da, da. And why? Why did she say that? She said that because I was different. I didn't appear different. I didn't convince or show. I was. Eventually, she sent me a text and she said, okay, Dan, I'll remarry you. And when we got remarried, I knew 100% that I can't make the same mistake. The mistake I made when I was coming up making money was that I wanted to keep the money. It was greed. If I would have hired somebody to do all the things that I didn't know how to do or didn't want to do, and I'd have paid them a lot of money to solve those problems for me, I would have had more time to solve the problems in my marriage, because there's only so much mental real estate. And so I hired a C-suite level guy, multi-six figures per year, to be my operations, my COO. He has taken so much off of my plate that I now not only have more time to worry about the high level stuff in my business and growing my brand, but also taking the time to fix things in my marriage, taking the time to sit and evaluate what I'm doing wrong, how I could say things better, et cetera, and also realizing, and men, guys, listen, most of you are logical like me. Women don't want their problems solved. they want you to listen to their problems. I know that seems crazy and weird to you, but that's because you're you. You're not a woman. Women don't want you to solve their problems. They want you to listen and relate to their problems. And for a man, that's hard because when we hear a problem, we want to fix it. We want to solve it. We fix problems. That's what we do. Once you can realize that that is not what a woman wants from you, you can really begin to navigate a lot of the problems in your relationship, in your marriage. You can create attraction even if you've been married for a long time because you're giving them what they want. And I never had the time to even wrap my brain around that because I was so busy fixing problems that I should have hired someone else to solve, to operate, to organize. And as you come up with money, stop spending it on vacations, stop spending it on fancy watches, as I show off a Rolex, and spend it on people that can give you back the thing that means more and has more value than anything, and that is your time. Because if I offered to send you $1 million wire right now, you would say yes. But if I said, but you can't wake up tomorrow, would you take it? No, you wouldn't. What if it was 10 million? Would you take it? No, you wouldn't. What if it was $1 billion? Would you take it? No, you wouldn't. Why? Because you'd be dead. You'd have less time. Time is infinitely more valuable than money. You can make money back. You can't get time back. If you lose money, you go and you make it again. But if you lose time, that time is gone forever and ever. It never comes back. There's nothing you can do. You can go learn a new skill, you can make money. You can improve on the skills you have, you can make money. You can use the skills you have more, you can make money. You can't get time back. And so when you are looking to invest, once you actually have some coin, invest in people that give your time back. Because when you get your time back, now you have the time to make more money and preserve the thing that is so much more valuable than money, and that is time with the people that you love. This is my advice to men out there who are struggling to navigate building wealth and maintaining a relationship. And so here is the framework summarized. Number 1, do not convince or persuade. Change. If you change, if you work on yourself and you actually correct the problems, there is no possible way they will not be noticed. You do not have to convince. You do not have to persuade. You do not have to sell. You change and you fix the problems in your life, and it will be blatantly obvious without you having to put in a single click of effort. Number 2, invest early in the things that give you more time to solve problems outside of your business, which, believe it or not, will actually grow your wealth as well. Invest in that before anything else. Invest in it before watches, invest in it before cars, invest in it before real estate. People that give you your time back. And the third thing is accept that if you make a mistake, sometimes it is not going to be corrected. I may not have got my wife back. I may not have fixed the problem. But if you do everything in your power that I just said, here's what's going to happen. Number 1, you're going to do it because it's for you, not because you're trying to get your wife or your girlfriend or whatever back. It's actually for you. And that's when it's genuine. So you can't do it to get your wife back. I tried to do it to get my wife back, didn't work. When I've said my wife's gone, I'm going to do it for me because I can't live like this anymore. I can't stay up every night thinking of all the horrible things I've done. I can't correct it. That is when you will change for you. And if there is a chance that you would get your wife back or correct a relationship, that is the only hope, is to do it genuinely for you. And once you do that, that is the only hope that it will actually happen, not by scheming. And if it doesn't happen, you at the very minimum will prevent it from ever happening again. You will set yourself up for success rather than failure, and your next relationship will be a lot more amazing than your previous. And if you're in a current relationship and it's not fallen apart yet, do this and you could save it. Now, am I a relationship expert? No. Could everything I'm saying be total BS? Yes. But it's something I've gone through. It's something I've seen from my friends, from my colleagues, from the industry. And gun to my head, this is the best advice I would give a man who's struggling with these types of problems in their life and in their relationships and in their business. So I truly hope that this helps open your mind and you can learn a little bit from my story to help your story, your future story, and your life. Thank you so much. God bless. I'll see you in the next one.